I never planned to go into the attic that day. It had been nearly a year since Robert's passing, and I'd managed to avoid that particular task, sorting through the remnants of our 40-year marriage that he'd carefully stored away. But when my granddaughter Lily called about a school project on family history, I found myself climbing those narrow stairs, searching for old photo albums that might show her the grandmother I once was. The April sunlight filtered through the small dormer window, dust motes dancing in its beam. I'd expected the wave of grief that hit me upon entering this space. Robert's domain, really. He'd been the keeper of our memories, meticulously labeling boxes, Christmas decorations, tax returns, 1980 to 1989, kids' school projects. Even in storage, my husband had been organized to a fault. What I hadn't expected was the box with no label. It was smaller than the others, tucked behind a stack of luggage in the far corner. Just a plain cardboard box sealed with aging packing tape that had yellowed over the years. I might have ignored it, if not for the fact that it was the only container in the entire attic without Robert's neat handwriting identifying its contents. Curious, I brought it down and cut through the brittle tape with scissors from my sewing basket. Inside, protected by layers of tissue paper, was a worn leather journal, a small bundle of letters tied with faded blue ribbon, and a velvet pouch. The journal's leather was soft from years of handling. I opened it to the first page, where my husband's familiar handwriting greeted me. August 15th, 1975. I met someone today. Her name is Margaret. I've never believed in love at first sight until now. My hands trembled. 1975. We had been married for 7 years by then. Our daughters were 5 and 3. The entries continued for months. Detailed accounts of meetings at cafes, walks through parks, conversations about books and philosophy. Robert described Margaret's laugh, the way sunlight caught in her auburn hair, how her hand felt in his. November 20th, 1975. Margaret understands parts of me that Patricia never could. When I'm with her, I feel like my true self for the first time in years. The guilt is overwhelming. But I can't stop seeing her. I can't imagine my life without these moments we steal together. I felt as though I'd been plunged into ice water. My Robert, steady, dependable Robert, who coached soccer games and never missed a school concert, had lived a double life I never suspected. I read entry after entry, each one a knife twisting deeper. January 15th, 1976. Margaret is pregnant. Everything has changed now. The fantasy of our stolen afternoons has collided with reality. I look at Patricia and our girls each morning across the breakfast table, and I know what I have to do. I cannot abandon my family. But how can I abandon Margaret? How can I abandon my child? My whole body felt numb as I reached for the bundle of letters. They were from Margaret, dated throughout 1976. Her handwriting was elegant, slanted, so different from my practical script. Her words alternated between love, anger, desperation, and finally, resignation. June 8th, 1976. Dearest Robert, the baby came early. A beautiful boy with your eyes and chin. I've named him Daniel, after my father. I know we agreed it's best that you stay with your family, but I thought you should know about your son. I won't contact you again. Margaret. With shaking hands, I opened the velvet pouch. Inside was a small silver baby rattle and a photograph of a newborn. Daniel, June 1976, written on the back in Margaret's elegant script. I sat there on the attic floor among the physical evidence of my husband's betrayal, trying to reconcile the man I'd known with this secret he'd carried. Robert, who had been so attentive, so present in our marriage, how had he hidden this? Where had he told me he was going during those afternoons with Margaret? What business trips or late meetings had been lies? More pressing, where was Daniel now? A man in his late 40s, Robert's son, my daughter's half-brother. I don't know how long I sat there, the past rearranging itself in my mind like puzzle pieces shifting to form a different picture than the one I'd believed in for decades. The sunbeam moved across the floor as afternoon faded toward evening. My phone rang. Lily, wondering if I'd found any photos for her project. I assured her I had, my voice somehow steady, despite the earthquake that had just devastated my understanding of my own life. After we hung up, I carefully returned everything to the box, except for the photo of Daniel. That I slipped into my pocket. That night, sleep eluded me. I took out the photograph, studying the infant's features by the soft glow of my bedside lamp. Robert's chin, yes, and something about the eyes. I wondered what Daniel looked like now. Did he have children of his own? Had Robert ever contacted him? Had he known about his father, or had Margaret kept that from him too? Morning brought a strange clarity. The initial shock had receded, leaving room for other emotions. Anger, certainly, but also curiosity. And beneath it all, a question I couldn't ignore. What would I do with this knowledge? I could bury the box again, pretend I'd never found it, protect my daughters from the knowledge that their beloved father had been unfaithful, preserve Robert's memory as the devoted husband and father we'd all believed him to be. Or I could search for Daniel. A simple online search might find him. Did he deserve to know about his father? Did my daughters deserve to know about their brother? 2 days later, I found myself at a small cafe in Burlington, about an hour from my home in Montpelier. Daniel Hughes sat across from me, a man with Robert's eyes and chin, just as Margaret had written all those years ago. He held the journal in his hands, his expression unreadable. "My mother never told me his name," he said finally. "Just that he was married, that he chose his family. I assumed he didn't want to know me." "I don't think that's true," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "The journal, the letters, the way he kept them, he cared about you. He just made a choice he thought he had to make." Daniel nodded slowly. "And now you've made a different choice. Contacting me, sharing this," he gestured to the journal. "Why?" It was a fair question, one I'd asked myself repeatedly over the past 48 hours. "Because secrets hurt more than truth in the long run," I said. "Because you're his son. Because my daughters should know they have a brother. Because," I paused, gathering my thoughts, "because Robert's gone, but we're still here. And maybe something good can come from all of this, even now." Daniel studied me for a long moment. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Anger, resentment. Not this, openness." I smiled slightly. "Oh, I've been angry. I still am, in some ways. But I had 40 wonderful years with Robert. We built a good life together. That wasn't a lie, even if this was hidden within it." I hesitated. "Would you like to meet your sisters? I think they'd want to meet you." The way his expression shifted, hope breaking through caution, reminded me so much of Robert that my breath caught. "I'd like that," he said. 3 months later, we gathered at my house for a Memorial Day barbecue, my first attempt at hosting since Robert died. My daughters had moved through shock and anger to cautious curiosity about their newfound brother. Daniel brought his wife and teenage children who bore unmistakable traces of Robert in their features. As I watched them all from the kitchen window, Daniel showing my grandson how to properly flip a burger, just as Robert would have done, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. Not because the betrayal didn't matter, but because something valuable had emerged from its revelation. Later, as twilight softened the edges of the day, my older daughter Kate found me alone on the porch swing. "You okay, Mom?" she asked, settling beside me. "I am," I said, realizing it was true. "Your father was a good man who made a mistake when he was young. Then he made another mistake by keeping it secret." "I'm still trying to reconcile it all," Kate admitted. "But I like Daniel. And his kids. It's weird seeing Dad's expressions on their faces." I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "Do you think Dad would be glad we found out? That we found Daniel?" she asked. I considered this carefully. "I think he would be terrified at first," I said honestly. "But yes, I think ultimately he'd be glad. The burden of secrets is heavy. And family, even complicated, messy family, is precious." Kate rested her head on my shoulder, just as she had as a little girl. From the backyard came the sound of laughter as Daniel's daughter showed my younger grandson how to catch fireflies in a jar. I thought about the box in the attic, how something hidden away for decades had finally come to light, how secrets, once revealed, lose their power to haunt us, how even the most painful truths can sometimes lead to unexpected gifts. Robert's choice all those years ago had caused pain to Margaret, to Daniel, and now, belatedly, to me and our daughters. But as I watched our expanded family together in the gathering dusk, I couldn't help but feel that this ending, complicated as it was, held more healing than the secret ever could. The past cannot be changed, but how we respond to its revelations, that remains firmly in our hands. And sometimes, if we're brave enough, we can weave even the broken threads of the past into something new and unexpectedly beautiful. The end.